Today, what I want to talk about is the power of integrity and its relationship to presence. A couple weeks ago, I talked about the importance of presence over polarity and why being present actually is much more important than adhering to polarity themes. A lot of work that we see out there, there's this idea of the masculine and the feminine, and there's these polarity themes there. But what we're going to be talking, when I'm talking about presence, I'm really talking about that ability to be fully embodied and present. And that's something that everyone wants, regardless of what gender they identify as. There's not a person I know who does not want the other person that they're connected with, whether that's a friend, a parent, a child, or a lover, to be present with them when they are there. Even right now, I am practicing presence with you. I am fully focused on this space. Speaking of which, hello, Frank. Good to see you, brother. Feel free to drop a comment in or ask a question as I'm going through. So here's the deal. Presence goes hand in hand with integrity. What do I mean by that? A person who is in integrity with themselves is someone who is present with themselves. And when I'm able to be present with myself, then I am able to be more present with you. Because I know who I am. I know how I want to show up. I know what my values are. And I know I'm going to advocate and stick up for myself. And that's actually a good thing. One of the problems that I see out there in society in general, and this is especially true for men, is that a lot of men don't stand up for themselves. And they do it because they're trying to avoid conflict. And I get it. Because we've been taught in a sense, like, you get in conflict with somebody, that's a bad thing. It's bad for you to stand up for yourself. You know what? That needs to end. We need to be willing to stand up for ourselves. Now, getting into conflict doesn't mean that we have to go and start swinging fists at each other. It doesn't mean we have to yell. It doesn't mean any of that. What it does mean is that we have to learn how to be fully present and be grounded in ourselves enough that we can say, this is what I stand for. This is what I value. These are where my boundaries are. And I'm going to actually enforce those boundaries from a place of loving kindness and compassion. Hello, Jason. Welcome to the live stream here. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in as I'm talking here for this episode. And think about it. If you're in integrity with yourself, then you know who you are. You know what your boundaries are. You know, for example, that if someone starts to yell at you, you're not going to put up with it. You're going to say, no, you're not going to treat me that way. And I'm willing to walk away. This is one of the things that I often see happen is where, and I say this as a man who has abandoned himself in the past. I've been in relationships where I let someone yell at me, where I let someone break a statue in my house, where I let someone treat me with a lot of disrespect. I've had that happen with more than one person in my life. And why? Because I craved their approval. Because I thought that if I could just get them to like me, if I could just get them to be happy with who I was, that they would want to be with me. But here's the thing I found is that that's a lie that we tell ourselves. The more we try to get approval from someone else, the more we're actually abandoning ourselves. We're abandoning who we are. We're abandoning our sovereign presence in order to what? Hopefully get laid, hopefully get a kiss, maybe get a pat on the head and an attaboy. Doesn't really work that well, does it, gentlemen? When men abandon themselves, what they are doing is they are abandoning their sovereign presence. And what that means is they're abandoning their core values. They're abandoning their sense of self. They're abandoning who and what they are in a meaningful way. I don't want that for you, and I don't want it for me. I think the big realization that I'd had is that I'd had two relationships that I'd gotten out of in the last couple of years. First relationship was with someone who was a raging alcoholic, was really cruel and mean. And then the second relationship was with somebody who basically took advantage of me, moved into my house. And you know, the two things that these people had in common is that me, and what they also had in common was the fact that I was giving up so much of myself. I was giving up my integrity to be with these people. I was more concerned with trying to get them to like me, to approve of me, than I was for standing up for myself. I wasn't respecting myself. And if I wasn't respecting myself, do you think they were going to respect me? I can tell you what the answer to that is. It's a big fat no. When we respect ourselves, when we know what we stand for, we are in integrity, and that contributes to that sense of presence. And it's fascinating to me now because when I interact with people now and they're like, there's something about him that's different, what they're really connecting to is they're connecting to my presence because I'm fully present with myself. And I'm able to respond to them in a way that is measured and calm and direct and says, here's my boundaries. Here's what I want. Here's what I'm going to go for. You don't have to say yes to me. That's fine. And I don't have to say yes to you either. And I think this is a really important point to make. Too often are we looking for approval from other people. Too often are we looking to get a yes from someone else. And we're doing it at the cost of our souls, gentlemen. We're doing it at the cost of our heart. And because we're doing it at that cost, it ends up killing us. And I mean that. How many men do you know who've had heart attacks way too early in their lives? How many men do you know who are working at jobs they hate, stressed out by what they're dealing with because they're trying to please someone else? How many men do you know who are abandoning their wants and their needs and just seething quietly because the person they're with doesn't respect them? And here's the thing. At the end of the day, you can't control what other people do, but you can control yourself. And one of the most important things that you can do is say, I'm going to take responsibility for how I show up for myself. And I'm going to actually start taking better care of myself. And I'm going to choose myself and say yes to myself over other people. I'm going to be present with myself. Because when you learn how to say yes to yourself, what ends up happening is when other people come along and they say, hey, I want this or I want that, you get to pause and say, but do I really want that? And if you're saying yes because you're hoping to please the other person, that other person's going to sense it. And they're going to lose a little bit of respect for you. And every time you say yes to please someone else, they're going to lose more respect for you. But if you're saying yes because you're coming at it from a place of integrity, you're operating at it from a place of presence. You know who you are. You know what you really want. You're saying yes to yourself first. Then when you say yes to that other person, they're going to know that it's coming from that real place. And when you say no to that person, and this will inevitably happen, they're also going to know that it's coming from that place of integrity. They may not be happy at the time, but if they truly want to be in your life, they're going to respect that. And they're going to respect you. And the person who doesn't want to be in your life, well, then guess what? Walk away. You're better off without that person. That is one of the hardest things I see for so many men is they stay in relationships they're not happy with. They stay in relationships where they're basically abandoning themselves in the hopes that this other person is going to somehow like them and approve of them. And it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because that man hasn't learned to say yes to himself and no to everyone else. He hasn't honored his sacred yes, and he hasn't honored his sacred no. And if you haven't honored your sacred yes, if you haven't honored your sacred no, don't expect anyone else to. Because you don't have good boundaries at that point. You're basically a nice guy. And nice guys have porous boundaries. Nice guys get walked all over. That's a hard thing to hear. Most people don't want to hear that. What do you mean? I'm a nice guy. I'm going to get walked all over? Yeah, you're going to get walked all over. You're going to get walked all over when you're nice because nice guys don't speak up for themselves. Nice guys have covert contracts. Nice guys abandon themselves in the hopes that other people will give them what they want and need, instead of speaking up for what they want and need. When I looked at those previous relationships and was really honest with myself, yeah, I saw the way those people showed up and treated me, but I also saw how I had abandoned myself and allowed them to do that. And let's be clear here. I'm not responsible for what the other person does. I am responsible for what I do. That's an important aspect of the Sovereign Code, which is something that I talk about a lot in this men's work. Because to inhabit your sovereignty is to take responsibility for the way you show up in your life. It's to take ownership. We have the ability to respond. And what that really means is we have the ability to make a choice. I can choose how I'm going to handle this situation. I can choose to honor myself, or I can choose to abandon myself. This is why when we're present, our presence is a gift to other people, but it's also a gift to ourselves. If I am fully present with myself, it means that I'm honoring my sacred yes and my sacred no. I'm not giving that up for someone else. I am choosing myself. I'm choosing to honor who I am. And it's fascinating to me because what I've seen is the more I've oriented toward this, the more I've become present with myself, the more I've focused on living a life of integrity, a life where I am, in truth, fully aligned with who and what I am, and I am choosing myself first, the more I have watched other people respond to that and connect with me from a place of genuine desire and from a place of mutual respect. And that's what I want. I want someone in my life, whether it's another man as a brother, whether it's a family member, whether it's the person that I'm involved with romantically, I want that person to be able to see how fully present and focused I am because I'm saying yes to myself, and for that person to know that they are safe with me because I know myself and I'm in integrity with myself. And as a result, they can fully relax into that. And at the same time, they also know I'm going to call them into integrity with themselves. And I've done that. In my current relationship, I have called my romantic partner into integrity with herself a few different times now. And that hasn't been easy conversations. There's been a little bit of conflict there. No raised voices or anything like that. But there's been moments where I've said some things that haven't been easy to hear. And here's the interesting point, and I want you all to consider this. She's also called me into integrity sometimes, but she's done it from a place of loving kindness because she's actually seen the way that I'm showing up, and she wants more of that. She wants me to be in my integrity, in presence with her. And she knows that if I abandon that for myself, I'm essentially abandoning her as well. That doesn't work for either of us. And this is the key to having successful relationships, romantic, business, work, friendships, brotherhood, any of that. The more I show up for myself, the more I can show up for other people. And I can't do that without having a sense of integrity. I can't do that without being fully connected and present to myself. So I have to say yes to myself. We're taught in this society not to say yes to ourselves. We're taught that it's selfish. But who's teaching us that? Think about that for a moment. It's people who don't have an invested interest in seeing men empowered and in their sovereign presence. It's people who don't have a vested interest in seeing people in general empowered and in their sovereign presence. This is what we want, to be in our sovereign presence, to be fully living our lives from a place where we are the creator of our own lives. And if that sounds like a little far out there and like, oh my gosh, like that can't possibly happen, let me tell you, I've been in that place where I thought that. I've been in that place where I was operating from a place of victimhood, from not taking responsibility for how I showed up. And don't get me wrong, I'd gone through some rough circumstances in my life. But when I took full ownership of the way I was choosing to show up, That's when I started to take those circumstances and turn them upside down. And it didn't change the fact that I'd experienced some trauma. It didn't change the fact that there had been some things that had happened in my life. No. But it did change the way I showed up moving forward, because I became present with myself. And as I became more present with myself, I stopped settling for the crumbs. I stopped settling for a shitty relationship where the person I was with didn't really want to be with me and was just using me. I stopped settling for situations where people weren't fully showing up and having my back, because I started having my own back. And as a result, I started showing up better for the people I wanted to be with and connect with. And those people also started showing up and calling me in a different way. This is what it means to live a life of integrity. And this is the power it brings. It creates a sense of accountability. When my partner calls me in because she's seeing some area where maybe I'm not fully in integrity, she's honoring me, and she's doing it because she's also honoring herself. And there's that integrity piece right there. And when I call her in, it's the same thing. And again, not all those conversations are easy. But I would rather be having difficult conversations with somebody where we're actually coming out the other side more fully present and engaged and connected, than to be in a situation where we're not, where we're just lying to ourselves and we're settling for small. Too many people settle for small. And if you're one of those people, I get it. Small feels safe. Right up until it isn't. Right up until you wake up one day and you look at your life and you're like, why am I working at this job for this micromanager that I can't stand? Why am I in this relationship with this person who is totally disengaged or who is being openly disrespectful to me? Why am I settling for less in my life? Why am I missing out on the adventures that I want to have? The things that I want to do? If you buy into the narrative that you can't have those things, then you are settling for small, because you are basically saying, well, someone else is calling the shots and dictating how I live my life. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for any man, and I certainly don't want it for any person, period. We get to choose to be in our sovereign presence. We have that power. And it does mean that we have to take it back sometimes. We have to take back the power that we have abandoned. We have to take back, when we take that back by becoming present, by claiming our responsibility, and we take it back by getting clear on what our values are, what our boundaries are, and getting into integrity with who we are. And I'm going to be honest here, it's an everyday process. There are days that I get up and I still find myself occasionally slipping into old patterns. And I've got to reorient and refocus. And most of the time, I'm not asking someone else to help me do that. Occasionally, I'll get that help from someone else, but most of the time, I'm doing it myself. Today was a perfect example. I woke up this morning and I read a chapter out of a book called Money Loves You, You Love Money. And it was a really fascinating book to read, because it's exploring the relationship that people have with money. And one of the things it talked about is how when people focus on a number, they keep themselves small because they're so focused on that number that they're building an expectation into that. Instead of really looking at the value, they're looking at the cost. I'm like, that's me. Sometimes I'm so focused on the cost, I'm not seeing the value. I'm like, man, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to change my relationship with money. I'm going to keep changing it. I've been working on it, but I thought back to the last 6 months and how there were a couple times there where I wasn't clear on what was going to happen. I was choosing to step into a totally different life, choosing to live my life on my terms. And I didn't always have a definitive means of knowing that money was going to come in through the door. But it was funny. Every single time I let go and focused on just the value of what I wanted, money flowed in. Sometimes it came from unusual sources and in unusual ways. And let me be clear, I had to go out there and put myself out there. It wasn't just that I just waited at home for it to happen. I had to do something about it. But my point is that when I focused on the value, it flowed a lot easier. But when I focused on the cost, that's when things got stuck. And so I had to call myself in today on that. And I'm going to be calling myself in on that every day for a while, I have no doubt. But that's part of the power of presence as well. we start to recognize the areas where we have given away our power, and we take it back. We take back our presence, and we take it back by being in integrity with ourselves, by aligning with ourselves. So my brothers, and my sister who joined us on here as well, the people who are here, thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for choosing yourself by being here right now. And choose to be fully present with yourself. Choose to fully step into your power and presence. You have it within you. And if you need help, I'm here to help you out. I'm going through the same process, and I don't mind sharing that process with you. I'm not going to pretend I have it fully figured out, but I am getting there every single day. And I'm happy to bring you with me on that journey. So thanks for watching. This episode will air in a couple of weeks, but thanks for those of you who came on live, and have an excellent and fantastic day. Take care.